But actually, the blaming mechanism is actually a feedback system to let us know that we have an unrealistic expectation on people to be one sided. Really, the things around you that you seek and avoid and give credit and blame to are all projections of you. My topic today is, why are we so quick to blame people? Why do we like to project our blame on other people for our life? I'd like to hit that topic. We have in our brain, in the subcortical area of our brain, an area called the amygdala. It's part of the limbic system. And this is involved with emotions and survival. And we end up having two aspects. It's a carryover from our animal origins, you might say. We basically have a seeking mechanism to capture prey and an avoidance mechanism to avoid predator. When we see something that we like, that's scrumptious, that we want to eat and is prey, we, in a sense, give it credit. We see more positives and negatives, more advantages, disadvantages, and we activate in our autonomic nervous system the parasympathetic system in order to rest and digest and to consume it. That builds our body up anabolically. And we tend to give credit to things. Anything that we see more positives and negatives, we tend to give credit to. But when we see something that represents predator, we activate a response of avoidance, an instinct to avoid. And there we tend to want to give blame. We tend to associate more negatives than positives. So anytime we perceive something that challenges us, that we perceive to have more negatives than positives, more disadvantages than advantages, more loss than gain, more negative than positive kind of thing, we tend to blame. And on the opposite side, we tend to give credit. So we tend to project onto the external world things that support or challenge us with credit or blame games. But we also do that within ourselves. Whenever we believe that we've done something that supports somebody, we tend to give ourselves credit. We go into pride. When we tend to see that what we've done that we think has caused more disadvantage than advantage, or more pain than pleasure, or more loss than gain, we tend to give ourselves blame. And we go into shame, the blame shame. So we have the capacity to blame somebody on the outside or blame ourselves. We blame somebody on the outside, we resent them, despise them, want to avoid them with an instinct. We blame ourselves, we want to attack ourselves, self-depreciate, and minimize ourselves. And we feel guilt or shame. On the other side, when we infatuate with somebody else and admire somebody else, put them on the pedestal, see more advantage and disadvantage to them, we give them credit. And when we go into pride, we give ourselves credit because we're assuming that we cause more advantage and disadvantage to someone. So pride is an assumption that you, with your motor actions, have advanced or given advantage over disadvantage or benefits over drawbacks to someone. Infatuation with somebody is an assumption they're giving you more advantage than disadvantage, more pleasures than pains from somebody. Blame or shame is when you feel like you've caused more disadvantage than advantage or negatives to somebody than positives. And when you resent somebody, you're blaming them for having more negatives than positives, and you're wanting to avoid them. So it's the ratios of perceptions that give rise to the idea of credit and blame. The ratios of perceptions that we perceive. Now, we're taught most of our life what I call moral hypocrisies. Your grandmother, your mother, whatever, goes around and says, now be nice, don't be mean, be kind, don't be cruel, be positive, don't be negative, be generous, don't be stingy, be peaceful, not wrathful. And so you go in your life and you're trying to get rid of half of that equation and trying to be only one-sided. If you look really honest with yourself, and I mean really honest, you find out that you have both nice and mean and kind and cruel and positive and negative and peaceful and wrathful and all the way through your life. But you're under the assumption you're supposed to be one-sided. And you sometimes have the idea, because of social ideals, that the world's supposed to be that way. That the people around you are supposed to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, positive, never negative. Now, I've asked thousands of people. I teach a breakthrough experience, which is one of my signature seminars. I've asked thousands of people. If I was to go up to you and say that you're always positive and never negative, always kind, never cruel, always giving, never taking, always peaceful, never wrathful, always positive, never negative, would you believe me? And they go, no. If I said you're always negative, never positive, always, stingy, never generous, always taking, never giving, always wrathful, never peaceful, would you believe me? No. But if I said sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, in every case, they say, yes, that I feel certain about. So they're certain when they acknowledge that they have both sides. They're uncertain when they assume they can try to pull off one side without the other, and they're being labeled good or bad or positive or negative or, generous or stingy. Those labels are incomplete, as is credit and blame. Because when we give credit to somebody, we're blind to the downsides. When we give blame to somebody, we're blind to the upsides. How many times have you had a thing happen where you're really upset with somebody and then a day, a week, a month, a year, or 5 years later, you went back and go, wow, if that wouldn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I didn't see it at the time, but there was actually an upside there. When you are actually able to see both sides of people or events simultaneously, you're present, you're poised, you're purposeful, you're more productive, you're more resilient, adaptable, you're more empowered, and the blood glucose and oxygen goes out of that amygdala and the subcortical area and goes into the cortex, and you're now seeing objective truth. And you're not blaming or giving credit. I remember one of the mentors I had when I was younger, they said, take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on chief aim. The chief aim is the name of the game. The chief aim is what's highest in priority, the thing that's most deeply meaningful, the thing that's most inspiring that you want to focus on. And beware, because the things you think that are terrible out there, that you want to blame something on there, is feedback. It's there to break your addiction to the other side. If you stop and look at it, if you go out and pursue something that's a fantasy is something that's got all positives, no negatives. A nightmare's got something that's got more negatives than positives. If you pursue a fantasy, your own intuition will whisper to you the downsides and to make you doubt and insecure and fearful and everything else in order to show you the downsides to the fantasy, to crack the fantasy to get you back onto an objective. Your executive center in the forebrain is actually designed to transform fantasies into objectives. But when you're told you're supposed to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, you set up a fantasy for your life, and then the other side has to come up. And then when you're addicted to this side, and then this side shows up, you want to blame them for interfering with your fantasy. So we go around and we tend to blame people or blame ourselves when we're not living up to the fantasy of a one-sided situation. But actually, the blaming mechanism is actually a feedback system to let us know that we have an unrealistic expectation on people to be one-sided. In other words, if we understand that I'm not a nice person, I'm not a mean person, I'm a human being. And if you support my values, I can be nice to you. If you nice as a pussycat. If you challenge my values, I can be mean as a tiger. If you had an objective view and you understood that I'm just a human being with both potentials for nice, mean, both personas, then you have a realistic expectation. You're less likely to be let down when I give you both sides. But if you have a fantasy that I'm supposed to be one side or you're supposed to be one side, and then the other side comes up, you then blame yourself or blame other people because you have an expectation that's one-sided and skewed, and the other side has to be there because it's like two poles of a magnet. You can't get a one-sided magnet. So nature automatically brings both sides. So when you're living by highest priority in life and you're setting real objectives in life and you're activating the medial prefrontal cortex, which is executive one, the executive center in the brain, and you are setting real objectives, not fantasies, you have less credit, blame, distractions. And those are distractions. The things that you infatuate with and give credit to, and the things you resent that you give blame to, are the very distractions that hold you back from living a meaningful life, the mean between the pairs of opposites, as Aristotle described. But the second we try to live in lower values and try to inject the values of others and try to please other people all the time and try to live by moral hypocrisies and try to get rid of half of ourselves or get rid of half the world or half the people and try to only look for a fantasy of a one-sidedness, we're guaranteed to give credit to those people that happen to be wearing the persona that supports us and then blame to the people that happen to be the ones that challenge us. So I'm here to tell you that you have the capacity to set real objectives, real balanced objectives that allow you to have adaptability, resilience, and more presence in life. Or you can sit there and be searching for that which is unavailable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable and suffer. And so every time we go through and get addicted to the things that we want to give credit to, or subjected from the things that we want to give blame to, we're in our amygdala. We're in our survival mode, not our thrival mode. But the second we prioritize our life and get more objective and set real balanced objectives and mitigate the risk. So the purpose of strategic planning when you're setting real objectives is to think of all the things with your foresight of what could go wrong, what could interfere with the obstacles, and mitigate them. And those, by being aware of the obstacles, you're calming down the fantasy to see that it's got both sides, and you're preparing for it with foresight. And foresight's wiser than hindsight. Trial and error is the lowest heuristic and lowest way to function, and foresight is way more powerful. But setting an objective and having a balanced view reduces the probability of fantasies and nightmares, credits and blames, and distractions of infatuation, resentment, the pleasure and pain duality. You're more likely to be in the present. And if you put those two together simultaneously, you're actually doing something you love. You're doing something that's meaningful. You're doing something that inspires you. You're more productive and more present in your life. So why do people blame? Why are you so quick to blame? Well, our amygdala is a survival mechanism. And when we see prey, we've got to respond quickly to capture the prey. When we see predator, we got to respond quickly to avoid the predator. And so we go in and activate our adrenaline to capture the prey and avoid the predator. So we're so quick to response to that. But the reality is, like a martial artist, imagine a martial artist who's now being attacked by somebody. If he's a master martial artist, he's invited to dance. I remember when I was in my 30s or whatever, I had a very interesting teacher who was a martial artist, and he asked me to try to kill him. And I said, well, I don't have a desire to kill you. He said, well, then you have no desire to learn from me. I need you to try to kill me. And I went, I don't really want to kill you. And he says, well, then you don't want to learn from me. I said, okay. So I tried to punch him. And when he did, he grabbed my hand, he pushed me off balance or pulled me off balance, twisted it, made me hop on my toes, and kissed me on the cheek and put me back on my feet. And then the second time I tried to kick him, and he did the same thing. And no matter what I tried to do, he just pulled me off balance, and he had complete command. His mastery was way over mine, and I was humbled, and he put me back on my feet. And he says, that's the first lesson here. The first lesson is that when you're a neophyte in martial arts, you're going to perceive attack. When you're a master in martial arts, you're going to see an invitation to dance. So the individual who perceives a pleasure without a pain is a neophyte. The person that sees a pain without a pleasure is a neophyte. The advanced individual sees both sides simultaneously and doesn't give credit or blame, but just sits there and realizes that everybody on the outside is a reflection of what's on the inside, and it teaches you how to love all parts of you. Really, the things around you that you seek and avoid and give credit and blame to are all projections of you. They're all parts of you. In Romans 2:1 in the New Testament, it says, beware of judgment, for whatever you judge, you do the same thing. And what I found is that we only react to people on the outside that represent parts of us we have yet integrated, not to integrate, and not love inside ourselves. So the credit and blame system we're so, quick to do is basically an amygdala response because we are not aware of both sides. Our amygdala is there for survival. It makes us avoid and seek. Our executive center is there for thrival. It helps us see both sides. So instead of sitting there and being trapped, if you will, by a polarization and an incomplete awareness, when you've been highly infatuated, it's hard to sleep at night. Your mind is filled with these, and the thing you're infatuated is occupying space and time in your mind that's intrusive. When you're resentful, the same thing. So when you give credit and blame, your mind is so filled with noise, it's hard to sleep and you don't rest. You don't have a calm mind, centered mind. But when you see both sides simultaneously, so that's why in the breakthrough experience, I teach people the value structure to see why we project things and why we see things as support and challenges. I teach the Demartini method on how to neutralize them so you're not run by the external world. You're not sitting there projecting blame and credit onto things and looking for heroes and trying to avoid villains all day long, but allow you to see that it's all a reflection of you. And when you can integrate all of that inside you and realize nothing's missing in you, and all the things that you think are missing are the things that you react to, then you actually empower your life. That's why in the breakthrough experience, I do the Demartini method to help people empower their lives to transcend the blames and the credits, the resentments and the infatuations of others or themselves. Because we're not authentic when we're proud or shame, we're not authentic. We're exaggerating or minimizing ourselves. When we're infatuated or resentful, we don't have an authentic view of those people. We're blind to the downsides when we're infatuated and blind to the upsides when we're resentful. As long as we're blind to ourselves and others, we're living in survival. When we're fully awakened and conscious, which means we're not having unconscious parts, then all of a sudden we realize that there was nothing but love. All else was an illusion. So I just wanted to share a moment on that about credit and blame. And why are we so quick to do the blaming or giving credit? We're always addicted to some hero out there, and then we end up blaming when they don't turn out to be the hero. Look at all the heroes that we've been fantasizing about. You know, the great heroes, the Lance Armstrong, the Bill Cosby, and everything else. Everybody has two sides. Don't be fooled by facades. Don't be fooled by the negative facades or the positive sides. Look deeper, see the reflection, own it all. That's what I teach in the breakthrough experience. Because anything that you haven't integrated within yourself and seen both sides to, is going to occupy space and time in your mind. It's going to run your life. It's going to be stored in your subconscious mind, and it's causing you to react in life instead of proact in life. That's why I tell people to come to the breakthrough experience, so I can show them how to transcend the impulses and instincts of the animal nature within them, so they can actually live a more inspired life, live by their executive function and have governance in their life. A self-governed individual that has self-actualized their perceptions and actions and is able to go after and do the things they really love to do is way more fulfilling than sitting there and putting out fires all day long, being run by misperceptions of the outer world. And as I said a moment ago, the Buddha was described as saying uh, that the desire for that which is unobtainable, the one-sided world of positive without negative, and the desire to avoid the other side, the unavoidables, the negative without a positive, is the source of human suffering. So if you come to the breakthrough experience, I'll show you how to not be stuck in the world, the whirligig of the suffering world. Because there's absolutely no reason you have to see things from one side. You have the capacity to ask questions and be able to see both sides simultaneously and liberate yourself from the bondage of all those emotions. So come to the breakthrough experience. Let me show you how to do that. Put this into context for you. Actually make you do it so you get to see it and feel it and know it, and that way you've got it for life. And you can transform a lot of baggage that you have and turn it into fuel. Instead of being a victim of history, come and be a master of destiny.